This week we're shifting gears and looking towards Lent and Holy Week. There's a new travel guide for Vatican City, and we find out what we can learn from ancient mummies. Hello and welcome to Vatican Connections for the first week of February. I'm your Vatican Connection, Alicia Ambrosio. Two big changes in the Curia this week. Last Friday, Pope Benedict XVI issued two motus proprios, two letters written of his own will, setting out new rules to be implemented in specific situations. Now, one of the letters put the Pontifical Congregation for the Clergy in charge of seminaries, and the second letter put the Pontifical Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization in charge of catechesis. It seems like we're just putting away the Christmas ornaments and we're already looking towards Lent and Holy Week. This week, the Vatican released the schedule of liturgies that Pope Benedict will celebrate over February and March. And we also know that the Maronite Patriarch Bekkara Rai, along with two Lebanese young people, will write the texts for the Stations of the Cross. Every year, the Pope asks a different person or group to write the texts for the meditations that will be celebrated at the Colosseum on Good Friday. Last week, Cardinal Joseph Glemp of Poland passed away at the age of 83. His funeral was held Monday at St. John's Cathedral in Warsaw. Archbishop Joseph Kowalczyk said in his homily that Cardinal Glemp's life and service were demanding and he had to measure up to the evil of martial law. Cardinal Glemp died of lung cancer January 23rd, and his death was followed by 3 days of national mourning. Now, recently we told you about events being hosted in Rome by the Catholic Near East Welfare Association. And Catholic News Service spoke to Monsignor John Kozar about the importance of cultural diversity in the Church. Here's more.
There are 22 varieties of Eastern churches. Overwhelmingly in the United States, we tend to relate to the Latin Church. And we know little about, in some parts of the United States, there's been no contact with Eastern churches, as in other parts of the world. And we work in cooperation with the Congregation for the Oriental or Eastern Churches as agents of the Holy Father, extensions of the Holy Father. These are churches that have great history, and they're a treasure of tradition, liturgically, culturally, linguistically. So in partnership with the congregation, we help them as they articulate to us their needs. And sometimes the needs would extend to our brothers and sisters in the Orthodox tradition, sometimes with Muslims. Secularism, I think, rings much stronger in the West. But I think as the West's influence, as it comes, we're going to have to deal with that. Right now, it's not as obvious, although in urban areas, it is becoming a little more obvious, especially with the young. We would worry that the young people would want to imitate the West, that they might lose the best of their heritage. I think in our country, ethnically, we saw that happen. Look how many people in the United States right now, you ask them, what's your nationality? Well, I'm a little of this and a little of that. Really, they've lost that sense. I think we have a little bit of that with the religious dimension of the Eastern traditions. And we're not talking about nostalgia. We're not trying to preserve for nostalgic reasons people's faith traditions, but faith being at the core of who they are. That is their ultimate identity. And we want to be there to help them with that.
It's been 80 years since the Holy See published the first travel guide to Vatican City. That was in 1929. This week, the Vatican Publishing House released General Guide to Vatican City. It offers detailed itineraries for visits to St. Peter's Basilica and Tomb, the Vatican Museums, and the Vatican Gardens. It's available in English, Spanish, French, and Italian through the Vatican Museum's online gift shop. Last week, we heard about an exciting exhibit that the Vatican Museums is helping put on in Brazil. This week, Catholic News Service found out there's another project the Museums is working on dealing with much older artifacts.
Advancements in genetic testing and imaging technology have led to new and unexpected discoveries about ancient peoples, including the mummies of Egypt. Experts have just concluded a 2-year-long study on the adult mummies in the Vatican Museum's collections. The results will help the exhibit's curator reconstruct the lives of these individuals who lived more than 2,000 years ago, what they ate, how they lived, and why they died. In fact, pinpointing the diseases or ailments each mummy had is having a huge impact on modern medicine.
Dobbiamo ricordarci che questi sono studi anche importanti per la medicina e quindi per il recupero di tutta una serie di malattie che possono essere affrontate anche in tempi recenti in maniera anche diversa rispetto al corso che queste malattie hanno avuto nella storia. Quello che non deve essere mai dimenticato è l'approccio verso queste persone, quindi il rispetto in primo luogo, non una spettacolarizzazione, quindi un rispetto per delle persone che hanno avuto una vita, che hanno amato, che hanno vissuto, che hanno avuto figli, che hanno sofferto di malattie, di lutti, insomma come ciascuno di noi.
Did you know that the Vatican is home to one of the most important historical research centers in the world? The Vatican's secret archives have 1,000 years of history and are open to researchers of all faiths. This year we mark the 50th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council, so who better to reflect on the outcome of that council than the theologian to the papal household?
In theology, we base ourselves not on human expectations, but we base ourselves on the revealed Word of God, on what God has said. And the priesthood is not a natural human social function. The Catholic priesthood is tied with the unique priesthood of Christ, which means that we are not free to invent the priesthood according to our own customs, according to our own expectations. We interpret the priesthood through Christ. And the Catholic priesthood has been instituted by Christ, not invented by the Church. The apostles were not elected, they were not designated by the crowds, they didn't propose themselves, they were chosen by Christ. And he chose men as priests. And the incarnation, the Son of God, became flesh, but became flesh not in a sexless humanity, but as a male. So this is the fundamental reason why the Church cannot change the priesthood, the understanding of the priesthood, allowing for the ordination of women. Christ was courageous in respect to the local social customs. He was not afraid to be countercultural. He was saying things that the Pharisees didn't like. He was saying things contrary to human expectations. He didn't follow the expectations of the powerful, of Pilate, of Herod. He had his own word, his own mission. And so the argument that Jesus, had to fit into the local culture, and so now we have a different culture, and so we distort Christianity to make it look like what we are expecting and living out today. This is a distortion. And I think the church, by being rooted in the truth that we have received and not invented, the church is liberated from the slavery of fashion. If we remember that in ancient Rome, young people were never adults so long as their parents were alive, both men and women. The parent, the father, could decide about everything. Decide about marriage, he could even kill his child. And in the early church, young teenage girls who discovered Christ and decided to be the spouses of Christ reacted strongly against the dominant culture by saying they will be virgins of Christ, and they gave their lives. And between the times of the apostles and the great fathers of the church, we have these wonderful virgin martyrs mentioned amongst others in the first Eucharistic prayer. Agatha, Lucy, Perpetua, Felicity. These were young teenagers who said, my husband is Christ, and the Father will not marry me off. So this is a sign of an enormous dignity of the woman. It seems that women have a special access to the heart of Jesus, and access in a very vivid way of approaching him, of touching him, of praying with him, of pouring ointment on his head, of kissing his feet. So women have an access to Jesus. And maybe in some sense we could say that in this, women are more apt to draw from the mystery of Christ by the quality of their prayer life, by the quality of their faith, by maybe a greater facility to receive the grace of God and to give. But nevertheless, they are not endowed with the apostolic mission that Jesus gave to men.
Let's look at the appointments the Holy Father made this week. Canadian Father Guy Charbonneau has been appointed Bishop of Choluteca, Honduras. Father Charbonneau is a priest with the Society of Foreign Missions. Bishop Alexander Sample of Marquette, Michigan is moving. He will be Archbishop of Portland, Oregon. And Monsignor Laurent Lopo of Niamey, Niger, has been appointed Auxiliary of Niamey. This makes him one of 3 bishops in that country. Now, there was also a slew of curial appointments this week. Among them, the American Cardinal James Harvey. He's been made a member of the Pontifical Council for the Evangelization of Peoples and the administration of the Patrimony of the Holy See. The Maronite Patriarch Bekara Rai is now a member of the Congregation for Eastern Churches, the Supreme Tribunal of the Apostolic Signatura, and the Pontifical Council for Social Communications. Cardinal John Onyakin of Nigeria has now been appointed member of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the Pontifical Council for the Family. And finally, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle of Manila is now member of both the Council for the Family and the Pontifical Council for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People. Time to leaf through the Pope's day planner. This week, the Holy Father met with the Commission for Theological Dialogue between Catholics and Oriental Orthodox churches. The Pope acknowledged the progress achieved by the Commission and encouraged them to continue in their work. He also remembered participants in the dialogue process who have died recently. Pope Benedict also met with the Roman Rota, the Vatican-based tribunal that deals mainly with marriage cases. He said the current crisis of faith has caused a state of crisis for the Christian vision of marriage. He explained that closing oneself off from God and refusing the sacred dimension of marriage makes it more difficult to realize the highest model of marriage envisioned by the Church, potentially even undermining the marriage entirely if it also means rejecting fidelity, exclusivity, and permanence. Last week we answered some of your questions about the Vatican, and this week we have more answers to your questions. So our first question comes from Christine Cook, and she says that first, I would like to thank Pope Benedict for serving Christ, and I would like to know how he felt giving it all up for Jesus. What for him has been the greatest struggle? Well, Christine, for this answer we turn to Georg Ratzinger, the Pope's brother. He published a book called My Brother the Pope, and in that book he talks about what his brother Joseph went through when he realized that he'd been elected Pope. Shortly after the public announcement at St. Peter's, Benedict XVI called his brother Georg in Germany and told him the results of voting were so unforeseeable and the majority for Cardinal Ratzinger came about so quickly that he realized it had to be the Holy Spirit at work, so he surrendered to it quite peacefully. Now, in the homily at the Mass inaugurating his papacy, Pope Benedict said he did at one point ask God, "Don't do this to me," because he really just wanted to retire in peace. But a note from one of the other cardinals gave him the courage to accept the Lord's call peacefully. Lisa Merrick Bissett has more of a request than a question. She says, "I would ask the Pope if I could make him dinner." So, who does make dinner for the Pope? Well, it's a group of women called the Memores Domini, and they're consecrated women who belong to the Communion and Liberation movement. There are 4 Memores living in the papal household, and they handle the cooking and household needs. They also keep the Pope's rooms in order, as well as the rooms of his personal secretaries in order. They sort mail, and they help with some secretarial duties like archiving documents, and of course, they take care of the Pope's personal chapel. Keep your questions coming. We'll try to answer them in this segment or on our Facebook page. And if you're going to the Vatican, why not send us a postcard from there? We'll be happy to share it with our viewers. Vatican Connections is interactive. Send us your questions or comments by Facebook, Twitter, email, or post. Via email, send comments to info@saltandlighttv.org. And by post, send letters to 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, Canada. Time for this week's Roman Profile. The Vatican Library was founded by Pope Nicholas V in 1448 with only 350 Greek and Hebrew codices that he inherited from his predecessors. Over time, world leaders made donations of manuscripts, or popes acquired manuscripts privately. Pope Alexander VII bought the library of Queen Christina of Sweden upon her death in 1689. Today, the Vatican Library has 75,000 manuscripts, 1.1 million printed books, and 8,500 incunabula. Getting access is a lengthy process, and bona fide academic researchers get tightly controlled entry. The library is not to be confused with the Vatican Secret Archives, which has 1,000 years of history. Unlike the library, the Secret Archives house documents directly related to the Church's governance, documents from the Vatican congregations and offices, synods, and councils. The Secret Archives has 600 different collections of archives which are stored on 85 kilometers of shelving in a 2-level bunker. Pope Leo XIII opened the archives up to scholars of all faiths in 1881. Since 1924, the Pope grants public access to documents grouped by pontificate. The most recent collection of papal documents that can be consulted are documents from the papacy of Pius XI, as well as documents from the Second Vatican Council. Only scholars with a university degree doing scientific research will be given access, and clergy must have a licentiate. Those who do get in have to observe strict silence in the reading rooms, but once they leave, they have the story of a lifetime to share. That's what's been happening at the Vatican this week. Now, Saturday is the Feast of the Presentation of the Lord. Salt and Light will air that Mass at 11:30 a.m. Eastern or 8:30 a.m. Pacific, and 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Next week is the 85th anniversary of the signing of the Lateran Pacts between the Holy See and Italy, and there are special events planned at the Vatican. We'll also have full details about the Pope's message for Lent. From everyone here, thank you for watching and join us next time.